Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Practical English Podcast. My name is Mike.
And I'm Angela. We are so glad you could join us today. We have a really useful topic lined up that will make your English conversations sound much more natural.
That's right, Angela. Today, we're talking about comparatives and superlatives. The episode is called Comparatives and Superlatives Made Easy. Bigger, better, the best.
It sounds a bit like grammar, and it is, but this is the kind of grammar you use every single day. We use comparatives and superlatives to compare things, to express our opinions, and to talk about what is better, bigger, or more interesting.
Exactly. You hear them all the time. For example, you might say, this café is bigger than the other one. That's a comparative. Or you could say, this movie is more interesting than the last one I saw.
Right. And for superlatives, you might say something like, that was the best trip of my life. You're not just comparing two things, you're saying one thing is at the top level.
So in today's episode, we're going to break it all down for you. We want to make this as simple and clear as possible.
So what exactly will our listeners learn today, Mike?
Great question. By the end of this episode, you will know exactly how to form comparatives, words like bigger, faster, and more interesting. We'll also cover how to use superlatives, like the biggest or the most beautiful.
And we won't just give you the rules. We'll show you the common patterns for using them in everyday conversations. You'll learn how to use comparisons to make small talk, share your opinions, and sound more fluent.
That's the goal. Practical English. And this episode is perfect for our listeners who are around the A2 to B1 level. If you're starting to build more complex sentences, this is a key skill to master.
Absolutely. So let's dive into the grammar, but don't worry, we'll keep it simple.
Okay, let's start with comparatives. The name gives you a clue. You use them to compare two things, just two. Me versus you, this car versus that car, today versus yesterday.
That's the key thing to remember. Two things.
Right. Now, for most short adjectives, usually one syllable, the rule is very simple. You just add "er" to the end of the adjective, and then you use the word than. The structure is adjective plus "er" plus than.
Let's give some examples. If the adjective is big, it becomes bigger than. So you could say, this restaurant is bigger than that one.
Perfect. Or if the adjective is fast, it becomes faster than. My car is faster than yours.
And how about the adjective cold? Today is colder than yesterday. You're comparing today and yesterday. Two things.
Exactly. Now, there are some simple spelling rules to remember. If an adjective ends in a consonant-vowel-consonant pattern, like big, you double the final consonant. So B-I-G becomes B-I-G-G-E-R. Same for hot, which becomes hotter.
That's a great point. And if a two-syllable adjective ends in Y, like happy or easy, you change the Y to an I and then add ER. So happy becomes happier and easy becomes easier. For example, I am happier today than I was yesterday.
Okay, so that covers short adjectives. But what about longer adjectives, words with two or more syllables, like interesting or beautiful?
For those longer adjectives, we don't add ER. It would sound very strange. We don't say interestinger.
Definitely not. Instead, we use the word more before the adjective. The structure is more plus adjective plus than.
Let's use your examples. For interesting, you'd say, this book is more interesting than the movie. You're comparing the book and the movie.
Right, and for beautiful, you could say, that city is more beautiful than my hometown. Or for difficult, you might say, this job is more difficult than my last one.
The pattern is very consistent, which makes it easier to remember. If the adjective is long, use more.
Now, as with many things in English, there are a few irregulars to watch out for. The most common ones are good and bad.
Yes, we never say gooder. That's a very common mistake for learners. The comparative of good is better.
That's the one. For example, the coffee here is better than at the other cafe. And the opposite, bad, becomes worse, not badder. You'd say the traffic today is worse than it was yesterday.
Those two are so important to get right because we use good and bad to express our opinions all the time. That's a great summary, Mike. But what if we want to compare in the other direction? What if something is smaller or not as good? We can use the word less.
So to recap comparatives, for short adjectives, add er. For long adjectives, use more. And remember, good becomes better and bad becomes worse. Always comparing just two things. How does that sound, Angela? Excellent point, Angela. For longer adjectives, instead of more, you can use less. For example, this movie is less interesting than the book. It means the book is more interesting.
Sounds perfect. I think we're ready to talk about the next level up, superlatives. Exactly, and you can use it for many things. My new phone is less expensive than yours, or this path is less difficult than the other one. It's a very useful structure. Okay, let's move on to superlatives. If comparatives are for comparing two things, superlatives are for comparing three or more things. They describe something that is at the highest level, the top of the group.
That's a great way to put it. The highest level. So you're not just saying something is big, you're saying it is the biggest.
Exactly. The rules are quite similar to comparatives. For short adjectives, we add est to the end. And very importantly, we almost always use the word the before it. So the structure is the plus adjective plus est.
Let's use our examples from before. Big becomes the biggest. You could be in a city with many parks and say, this is the biggest park in the city. You're comparing it to all the other parks.
Or fast becomes the fastest. That was the fastest train I've ever been on. And cold becomes the coldest. Yesterday was the coldest day of the year.
And those spelling rules we talked about still apply. Big becomes the biggest with two G's. Adjective ending in Y, like happy, changed to iest. So happy becomes the happiest. That was the happiest day of my life.
Right. So what about the longer adjectives, Mike, like interesting and beautiful?
Just like we used more for comparatives, we use the most for superlatives with longer adjectives. The structure is the most plus adjective.
That's right. So you might say, she is the most talented singer in the competition. You're comparing her to all the other singers.
A perfect example. Or if you're traveling, you could say, this is the most beautiful place I've ever seen. Or for difficult, that was the most difficult exam of the semester.
And of course, we have our irregulars again, good and bad.
Yes, the comparative for good was better. The superlative is the best, as in, this is the best pizza in town.
And bad became worse in the comparative form. For the superlative, it becomes the worst. For example, that was the worst movie I have ever seen.
So, to summarize superlatives, you're comparing three or more things and talking about the top one. For short adjectives, use the plus adjective plus est. For long adjectives, use the most plus adjective. And remember, good becomes the best and bad becomes the worst.
I think those rules are very clear. But the most important thing is knowing when to use them in a real conversation.
This brings us to our learner tip section. Knowing the grammar is one thing, but using it confidently is another. Comparatives and superlatives are incredibly useful for small talk.
They really are. They help you share your opinion and ask others for theirs. You can use them to talk about almost anything, like cities, for example. Do you think London is more expensive than New York?
Yeah, or restaurants. The new Italian place is good, but I think the Thai restaurant is better. You can also use them to discuss movies. The sequel was okay, but the first movie was more exciting.
Travel is another great topic. What's the most beautiful country you've ever visited? Or jobs. My new job has longer hours, but the work is more interesting. Even hobbies. I find running more difficult than swimming.
Let's try a quick role play. Imagine we just saw a new movie. I'll start. Hey, Angela, what did you think of the new superhero movie?
Oh, hey, Mike. I thought it was pretty good. The special effects were amazing. I think they were better than in the last one.
I agree. The effects were incredible, but I thought the story was a bit slower than the first film. It wasn't as exciting for me.
That's a fair point. For me, the new villain was the best part. He was the most interesting character in the whole series.
Really? I thought he was the worst villain so far. But overall, it was a good movie. Probably the second best in the series.
See? In just a few sentences, we used better than, slower than, the best, the most interesting, and the worst. It's a very natural way to have a conversation.
So our tip for all of you listening is to practice this. The next time you're talking about a movie, a book, or a restaurant, try to use a comparative or superlative. It will make your English sound much more advanced.
All right, that brings us to the end of our main topic for today. Let's do a very quick final recap.
Sounds good. Remember, use comparatives to compare two things. For short adjectives, add ER, and for long ones, use more.
And use superlatives to compare three or more things and describe the one at the top. For short adjectives, use the, EST, and for long ones, use the most.
And don't forget the key irregulars: good, better, the best, and bad, worse, the worst. If you can master these, you'll be well on your way.
We hope this episode was clearer, more helpful, and the best grammar lesson you've had all week.
Nice one, Angela. As we always say here at the Practical English Podcast, speak clearly.
Speak professionally.
Speak with confidence.
Thank you so much for listening. If you found this episode helpful, please follow our channel so you don't miss the next one.
And we would love it if you could like this episode and leave us a comment. Let us know what you think, and please tell us what you would like to listen to in our next episode. We read all your comments.
Thanks again for joining us. We'll talk to you next time on the Practical English Podcast. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.